Hey there guys, welcome back to the channel. So first of all, if you notice something different, I'm actually in Cyprus. I'm not in my home studio, but in today's video, I left a poll on my Instagram asking you guys to choose a topic of me to choose for my next YouTube video. And you guys wanted something educational. Now, I'm not gonna lie, I don't know what to do. I only trade one model. So it's hard for me to make the same videos over and over again because on Instagram, all I preach about is the Asia Suite model. So I actually took a trade. It was on the Tuesday of this week. So I thought I'd break it down for you and maybe just kind of go through some little kind of tweaks in terms of the Asia Suite model that you guys are making mistakes on, such as the manipulation leg, where to mark it out from, entries. How do I get really precise entries? So when I break down this trade that you can see on my screen currently, as you can see, it's only a small scalp, but that is my job. I only scalp, so I only take small pieces of the pie. But this trade that, as you can see on screen, is literally textbook. It's textbook for the Asia Suite model. So if you're new around here and you don't know myself, my name's Leo. I'm 23 years old and I'm a full-time trader. I've been trading for just over 2 years now. And I was actually taught by a mentor who's been trading for 14 years. So I've almost fast tracked my way to successful and profitable trading. So in this video, I'm going to try break down again just some little tweaks in terms of the Asia Suite model, some things that you guys are making pretty simple mistakes. But again, it's completely natural. If you guys are obviously not being mentored and you're not getting that guidance, it's going to be hard for you to make these tweaks. So hopefully by the end of this video, your questions, such as how to mark out the deviation tool, how I get precise entries, are going to be answered in this video. So first of all, let's break down the trade that you see on screen. So this was taken, as I mentioned, on Tuesday. This was in London session. For some reason, my chart is set to New York time, so I need to change that. And the way I like to do my YouTube videos is I like to keep them as least edited as possible. And the reason I do that is so nothing's kind of missing and it's just structured in the way that I explain it. I like to think I've got a way of teaching and it can be quite simple and it can really put it into perspective for people to understand. So hopefully you'll be able to understand. So we're just going to go full screen just so you guys can see this fully. This was the trade that I ended up taking. It was relatively textbook in terms of confluences. So I'll just quickly kind of draw it out and then we'll kind of talk through it. So we actually had this opening gap on the daily time frame. Obviously, when we traded into this matched up with deviation 4, and there was actually a divergence between NQ and ES down at this low. So that was literally the trade. And I use the same confluences every single time. I use a trading checklist that, again, I live by. So let's run through this trade. So coming into the day, obviously, first of all, what we do is we wait for the sweep of Asia high or Asia low. And obviously, we swept the Asia low. Now, what a lot of people will do is they'll get FOMO. And you can see here, this is just accumulating orders. Okay, so many people are getting long too early. And all I do is wait for price to tap into these levels here, deviation 2 to 2.5, or deviation -4 that you can see down here. And until price comes into these areas, I am not allowed to trade. And just by doing this, I actually missed out on a couple of losses because there was actually a divergence between these lows here. There was an inverse fair value gap right here. So a lot of people would have seen this that have entered long and they've got absolutely cooked. And the reason I didn't enter here was because price didn't tap into my deviation level -4, as you can see here. So until price comes into this area, I am not allowed to trade. And I'm not strict on myself. I set myself a rule that I am not allowed. I can, but I'm not going to let myself until I see what I need to see. And that's just a level of discipline that I've been taught through trading with my mentor. So coming into the day, obviously, I waited for the sweep of Asia low. We got the sweep of Asia low. Obviously, there was a div here, and everyone's getting cooked. They're getting involved too early. And just by waiting for price to come into deviation -4, I've managed to catch this clean trade. So let's just kind of talk through the actual entry because I think this is quite interesting. So obviously, when we came down to this level, obviously, we had the divergence that was created. We tapped into deviation -4. And put it this way, as soon as price taps into deviation 4, only then am I looking for a divergence and an inverse gap for entry. I'm not doing anything. I'm just sat on my hands doing absolutely nothing. So at this point here was where I got really involved in price and I really started to do some in-depth analysis. So obviously looking at, the bigger picture, you can kind of see that overall we're pretty bearish at the moment, but I did anticipate us to eventually come fill this gap because pretty much every time we create these gaps, we always fill them. I can go back here, find an example. So you can see here, we created a gap, we filled it. There'll be another one somewhere. We created this gap here, we filled it. So these gaps get filled a lot of the time. So I anticipated coming into this week that this gap would be filled. So you can see here that we came into this area, and a lot of the time, these areas are used as like support resistance. So as soon as price came into this area, I was looking for the model. When it comes to entries, I use an inverse fair value gap. So you can see on the 3-minute here that we had this gap. Let me just move that out of the way. And there was on the 1 minute, there was an inverse gap here. So I could have got involved here, but I chose not to, because if you go into the 2 minute, you'll actually notice there's gaps like straight above. So I'd have been entering with inside another gap. So I just waited for the 3 minute closure. We closed here. So I actually got involved. And then obviously price ended up flushing straight to our take profit, which was really clean. So I entered, I think it was here. My stop loss was, I think it was actually just below this wick here. And I just targeted a 1 to 2. And we ended up hitting take profits pretty much to the tick. And just by doing this on a consistent basis, I'm able to catch really clean trades like this. And the Asia sweep model is so repeatable. Now, let me just kind of walk through the whole trade. Let's just replay price and show you my whole thought process. So we'll delete all of this analysis and we'll start fresh. I've come to the chart and the first thing I'm doing is, right, it looks to me like we're probably going to go sweep the Asia low, right? As you can see, we've pretty much sold off through Asia. I anticipate this to continue. So first thing that I'm doing is I'm looking for my manipulation leg. Now, when it comes to manipulation legs, it's the last push up before the big sell-off. So for example, where's the manipulation leg here? I'll give you a couple of seconds. So the manipulation leg is this last push down, push up before the big sell-off. So this leg here is where I'd mark out my deviation tool. So I'd simply go from the high to the low of this leg. This then projects out my reversal levels. Now, if we take a look at this price action here, where's the last push up before the big sell-off? Well, if we kind of take a look, so we have a big push up and we have a big sell-off. So would this be the manipulation leg? Yeah, it would be. You can see it's textbook. If I draw this out in terms of this tool here, what is it? It's the push up, and then we have a big sell-off. This right here is the manipulation leg. So first thing that I'm doing in coming into the day is I notice that we're probably going to go for the Asia low. So simply I go, right, well, where does this line up in terms of deviation levels? So I'll go from wick to wick. And what this does is it projects out deviation 2 to 2.5, which you can see we've already closed below. So this is basically irrelevant. So now I'm not allowed to do anything until price comes into deviation -4, okay? So quite simply, I'm doing nothing. Still not doing anything. Still not doing anything. Still not doing anything. This is how boring trading can be sometimes. A lot of the time I'm just sat there doing absolutely nothing and I'm bored as hell. That's kind of how trading is nowadays. And you can actually see that now we've actually tapped into deviation -4. So you can see it here. If I draw it out, you will see that we've tapped into the -4 and we've had a nice reaction. So just to show you again, it's the last push up before the big sell-off. I can show you here again. This is also a manipulation leg. It's the last push up before the big sell-off. So if I draw this out in terms of the path tool, so you can see here, we have a push up, push down, push up, big sell-off. This last push up is my manipulation leg. So I can grab my Fibonacci tool, go from wick to wick, and you can see that's the manipulation leg. But again, this is at a time that I wouldn't even be trading, so it's kind of irrelevant. But it just goes to show that finding the manipulation leg is actually really simple. It's the last push up before the big sell-off. And it's the same for, you know, price going lower to go higher. So if I just draw it out like this, price is bearish. Where's the manipulation leg? Well, it's this one here, the last push down before the big up move. So quite simply, my deviation tool would be marked out from this low to this high. Makes sense? So now hopefully you understand in terms of the deviation tool and how to mark it out, it's actually really simple. It's just the last push up before the big push down. The last push up before the big push down. So price is already flushed through deviation 2 to 2.5, so that's irrelevant. So now I can't do anything until price comes into deviation -4. So now that price is coming to deviation -4, my job is to kind of get a bigger perspective on what price is doing. So I'll zoom out on a higher time frame, such as a 50-minute or an hourly. Now, looking at this, you can obviously see that we were trading with inside this massive gap here. And now that we fill this area, I'm also anticipating this to have a reaction out of it. And because the deviation -4 lines up with this gap, this solidifies my idea of going long. Now, what I can also do is I can use ES as a tool. Can you spot the divergence? I'm going to flicker through. Let me just delete that because that's an old div. I'll just flicker through, see if you can find it. Can you spot the divergence? So the divergence is actually between this low here. Notice that on NQ, we've actually failed to take this low, but on ES, we've actually taken this low. This is a divergence. So I've seen this and I've gone, right, well, this looks really clean. We've got a divergence that lies within this gap. We've got a deviation -4. Now what I'm looking for is an inverse gap to enter. So I came onto the 3-minute. I said, right, okay, so we have this gap here. Cool. Now I'm not going to do anything until price closes that. So again, I'm just sat on my hands. Now what I like to do is before this is even closed, I will set on my wrist. So I'll go, okay, so based on this candle here, I'll have my stop loss below this candle. I'll simply target a 1 to 2. I'll go on my risk calculator. I'll put in how many points my stop loss is. So I've got my risk ready. So then what I did was I entered on this closure, stop loss, the same size, simply targeting a 1 to 2. And as soon as that candle is closed, it has to close, and the next candle is formed, I'm in this trade. And then if we play price out, now my break-even point for this trade was actually this high up here. So as soon as price crossed this area, I was break-even, and we absolutely smashed take profit. And that's how simple trading the Asia sweep model is. It's the same confluences every time. So let me just walk you through it one more time. So we got the sweep of Asia low, meaning that Asia high can be my target. I have reason for price wanting to go higher because there's a clear target of where price may likely want to go. The reason I also wanted to get in line for a long was we had this massive gap in price. We tapped into deviation -4. We had a nice reaction out of it, and we created a divergence. And that is all my model is. It's the same thing every time. Coming into the day, this price action, bearing in mind, is really not brilliant, but this is a pretty textbook play in terms of the Asia sweep model. So again, what I'm doing coming into the day is I understand, well, first of all, I can't do anything until price sweeps Asia high or low. So what I can do is work out where I'm allowed to get involved in price. So this is the last push down before the big up move. So where's my manipulation leg? Well, my manipulation leg is going to be this point here, this massive down move. So if I mark out my deviation tool from wick to wick, you'll see that it's projected out my deviation level 2 to 2.5 and deviation -4. Am I anticipating price to come into deviation -4 this session? Bearing in mind, that's like 600 points away. Probably not. So all I'm focused on is deviation 2 to 2.5. So until we come into this area, I'm not allowed to get involved in price. So what I did was I sat on my hands and I just simply waited. So we swept the Asia high, as you can see, meaning that Asia low is going to be my target. What this tells me is it has reason to come back lower, meaning that looking for shorts in this situation isn't necessarily a bad idea. So you can actually see now that we've tapped into the deviation -2. You can see that we've just about wicked into this area. So now that gives me reason to start actually looking at price. Now, because we swept the Asia high, this gives me reason for price to likely come down to the Asia low, as 9 times out of 10 this happens. So now what I'm looking for is a divergence. Now, if I flicker between these two assets, there's actually a divergence between this level here. So you can see here, the ES has failed to take this wick, but on NQ, we actually have taken it. Now, if I come to a 50-minute time frame, what you'll also notice is we're trading with inside this massive 50-minute gap. So already what I'm noticing is we're trading with inside this 15-minute. We've tapped into our deviation -2. Now all I'm looking for is an inverse gap for entry. It's really that simple. Deviation -2, divergence, look for an entry. So coming on to a 1 minute, well, there's no clean gaps here. As you can see, there's very small gaps, but again, this gap needs to be bigger than 5 points for me to get involved in price. So there's nothing on the 1 minute. On the 2 minute, as you can see, there's nothing, but there is this 2 minute gap down here that looks quite nice. And this is also bigger than 5 points. Now, if I come to a 3 minute, you'll notice that this gap is pretty much the same thing. It's just a little bit smaller. So it was actually the 3 minute gap that I entered from. So if we play price out, you'll notice here that we can't enter yet because the price hasn't closed the gap. Price has now closed the gap, meaning that I can now get involved. So simply enter short on the candle closure, stop loss just above this high, and then again, simply target a 1 to 2. Now, statistically speaking, this should run all the way down to the Asia low. But my job as a trader is to catch a piece of the move. Aiming for moves like this on a consistent basis, your win rate is going to be terrible compared to just aiming for something like a risk reward of 2. Although I do have conviction price should come down to this level. So now I'm in this trade, we'll play price out. And you see that we smash take profit. And if we were to aim all the way down for Asia low, and it just shows you how strong this model is. 9 times out of 10, when we sweep the Asia high, we're going to come for the Asia low. And as you can see, you'd have caught a beautiful trade here for a risk reward of 6. But again, that's very unrealistic for me. I'd only aim for a risk reward of 2. And that is how simple the Asia sweep model can be. Same confluences, same setup, same time, every single time. And doing this on a consistent basis has printed me results like this. These are my yearly results, and I'm very pleased with them so far. So if you're curious to know how I learned this, it was my mentor who's been trading for 12 years who actually taught me this model. Now, if you'd like to trade with me, my mentor, and the rest of the team that also trade this model, and my mentor live streams this so you can actually watch him trade it, you're more than welcome to join us. Just check the link in the description where you can visit the website. You'll find out more information about myself, Todd, and Chris, who also runs the mentorship. And we work very closely with the individuals to help you master this strategy. And once you've mastered this, There's no more YouTube rabbit holes. There's no more trying to piece everything together because it's already done for you. We've done the hard work. All you need to do is enter on a consistent basis with good risk management and good psychology, and you have yourself a profitable model. Covering the agent suite model is something that I do on a consistent basis, and I've seen a couple of people have issues in terms of marking out the deviation tool, where the manipulation leg is. So hopefully now you've got a bit of a better understanding. If you have any questions, please do leave them in the comments. I'll get back to them in as much detail as I possibly can, and I'll try to answer your questions so you have a good understanding by the end of this video. But thank you ever so much for watching. I really do appreciate your time, and I'll see you all in the next one. You take care.